All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating idea, one that might just flip everything you thought you knew about ancient Indian society on its head. It all centers around one single institution, the temple, or as it's known, the mandir. And it suggests its role was, well, way bigger than we ever imagined.
So let's just jump right in with this huge question. When you picture an ancient temple, what comes to mind? Probably a quiet, sacred place for prayer, right? A place for rituals. But what if that's just scratching the surface? What if temples were actually the buzzing, beating heart of the entire society? We're talking economy, social welfare, you name it.
Look, nobody really disputes that the mandir was a big deal in ancient Indic society. I mean, it was absolutely central. But the how? That's where the story gets really interesting. And the full picture, it's actually kind of fuzzy, and scholars are still debating it.
So right now, there are kind of two main ways people look at this. On one hand, you've got the devotional center idea. A place for worship that creates a little local economy around it. On the other hand, there's the knowledge center view. Basically, ancient universities funded by kings. And look, both of these are probably true, but they might not be the whole story. Because when you really think about it, these two ideas just don't quite cut it. They leave these huge gaps. They don't explain the sheer scale of these temples or just how deeply they were woven into the fabric of everyday life. It feels like we're missing a massive piece of the puzzle. And that's exactly where researcher Rahul Deodhar comes in. His work is the source material for our explainer today. He basically says, hold on, the reality here was way more complex. He thinks we need a totally new model to even begin to understand what was going on. And that brings us to his big idea. Deodhar's hypothesis is that ancient Indic society ran on something he calls, and yeah, he's using modern terms here, a socialist capitalist system. I know, that sounds like a total contradiction, right? So let's unpack exactly what he means by that. Okay, so the key here is to think of it as a society with two engines. Engine number one was capitalist. This was your trade, your commerce, all managed by the king and the state. But then you had engine number two, the socialist side. This covered all the social welfare stuff, all the professional services, and it was run completely by the mandir. Two different systems working together to power the whole society. Now, that capitalist part probably sounds pretty familiar. You've got the king, the government, they're providing law and order, building the big roads and ports and overseeing trade. And how do they pay for it all? You guessed it, taxes. Pretty straightforward stuff.
But now, this is where the theory gets really revolutionary. It takes the mandir and says this wasn't just a place to pray. No, it was the absolute central pillar of that entire so-called socialist system.
And to help us wrap our heads around this, Deodhar gives us a great modern comparison, a university. Think about it. He says the professionals working for the mandir were like tenured professors today. They were experts, dedicated to their work for life, and totally free from the pressure to, turn a profit. So picture this. The mandir employs doctors, teachers, lawyers, architects, all the pros a society needs to function. And here's the deal. The temple takes care of everything for them. Housing, food, clothes, the whole shebang. And in exchange, these professionals didn't have to worry about running a business. Their only job was to focus on their skills and serve the community. That's it. Okay, but what does that actually look like in real life? Well, let's take something simple, like signing a contract. Under this system, you wouldn't just scribble your name on a document. Nope. You'd both go to the mandir. A legal expert there, one of those tenured professionals, would draft the contract for you. And then, and this is the kicker, the temple's deity itself would witness the agreement. That makes the contract way more than just legally binding. It's spiritually and socially binding too. Super powerful. But wait, it gets even bigger. We're not just talking about individual professionals here. The hypothesis is that the mandir housed entire institutions. I'm talking about banks that could give out high-risk loans for things like shipbuilding, hospitals where you got care because you needed it, not because you were rich, even top-tier schools for things like engineering and math. All of it, supposedly, run by the mandir. And this is where that socialist label really starts to make sense. The mandir was, in effect, a massive social safety net. It's providing free education for kids. It's running community kitchens that feed everybody, from its own staff to the needy. It's giving shelter to travelers. It's even organizing disaster relief. It was the community's ultimate backup plan. Okay, I know what you're thinking. A system this huge, this generous, who's footing the bill? It's a great question. Because remember, it wasn't getting money from the state.
It had to be totally self-sufficient.
Well, the theory goes that the Mandir had four main ways of making money. First, fees for some of its professional services. Second, profits from its own institutions, like the banks. Third, voluntary donations from the community, what's known as dan. And fourth, sponsorships from wealthy patrons, like the king or local merchants. You put all that together, and you've got a seriously powerful, independent financial engine.
Okay, it's really important we hit the pause button here for a second. We have to remember everything we've just talked about, it's a hypothesis. A really compelling one, for sure. It's a model that Deodhar proposed to try and fill in the blanks. But it's not, proven historical fact. Not yet, anyway.
And to his credit, the author himself is super upfront about this. He literally calls it his biased view. It's a theory he's put a lot of thought into, but he knows it needs to be put to the test by historians. And that kind of intellectual honesty, you gotta respect it.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Why should we care about this today? Well, Deodhar suggests that this ancient model might offer a fresh look at a problem we still struggle with. Do you want a huge, inefficient government running everything, or a lean government that can't help people when things go wrong? This system, well, it proposes a third way.
So, where do we go from here? The path forward seems pretty clear. Step 1. Researchers need to dig in and find out if a system like this really existed. Step 2. If it did, let's analyze what worked and what didn't. And hey, step 3. If it turns out this model is wrong, then we're back to the original mystery. What was the real system that allowed that society to thrive for so long?
And that's really the big question I want to leave you with. Just think about it for a second. If it's true, if a decentralized, community-run institution could really provide this level of comprehensive support for an entire society, independent of the state, what lessons might that hold for building more resilient and supportive societies in our own time?